Let's begin, though, this morning looking ahead to President Trump's arraignment in Miami tomorrow. New CBS News polling shows many likely Republican voters are undeterred by the federal indictment against him. And 76% of likely GOP voters say they are most concerned the indictment was politically motivated and not about the national security risk. Trump continues to be the solid frontrunner in the race for the 2024 Republican nomination, with 61% among likely primary voters. Robert Costa has more from Miami. Bob, good morning.
Good morning, Vlad. Former President Trump is expected to plead not guilty when he arrives here at the federal courthouse in Miami on Tuesday afternoon. And sources close to him and his legal team say over the weekend he was frustrated but also defiant, telling advisors that he will never quit the 2024 race for the White House, even if he's convicted.
As far as the joke of an indictment, it's a horrible thing.
Back on the campaign trail this weekend, former President Trump railed against the federal indictment as a political hit job.
I mean, the only good thing about it is it's driven my poll numbers way up.
Trump is facing 37 criminal charges. Among them, prosecutors say he illegally retained classified documents detailing U.S. nuclear weapons programs and details about military activity and capabilities of both the U.S. and foreign countries. Special counsel Jack Smith spoke after the indictment was unsealed.
Our laws that protect national defense information are critical to the safety and security of the United States, and they must be enforced.
In the filing, pictures show what the indictment says are sensitive documents found in a bathroom, a public ballroom, and spilled out on a storage room floor at Trump's Florida home. During the 2016 campaign, Trump repeatedly hammered Hillary Clinton for her handling of sensitive material, and his own words are included in the indictment.
We can't have someone in the Oval Office who doesn't understand the meaning of the word confidential or classified.
On Sunday, Trump's former Attorney General Bill Barr said he was shocked by the amount and sensitivity of the documents mentioned in the filing.
If even half of it is true, then he's toast. I mean, it's a very detailed indictment, and it's very, very damning.
Meanwhile, many of Trump's political allies defended him over the weekend.
Donald Trump, you may hate his guts, but he is not a spy. He did not commit espionage.
We gather here in North Carolina after a sad day for America.
And as for his Republican rivals in the 2024 race, many were quick to attack the Justice Department instead of the former president.
Attorney General Merrick Garland, stop hiding behind the special counsel and stand before the American people and explain why this indictment went forward.
Trump is expected to arrive here in Miami, Florida, later Monday evening. And on Tuesday, after his arraignment here at the courthouse, he is expected to head back to New Jersey to have a speaking event at his golf club and then meet with major donors.
So, Bob, you're just outside of the courthouse in Miami, the calm before the media storm, no doubt. What can we expect to happen tomorrow? What will we see?
We know he's going to plead not guilty. The media storm here is, well, it's a bit of not much of a storm just yet. There are many media outlets here, and the city is bracing for protests. But the security concerns seem to be pretty muted at this point, thankfully. It's just a normal day in downtown Miami at this point on Monday morning, people going about their lives. I don't see any protesters or any activism, at least in front of the courthouse right here. And so what we can expect, though, is the former president to be escorted in by his motorcade, his Secret Service detail. He'll come in, much like we saw in New York City a few months ago, and he will plead guilty. We're not sure exactly about how he's going to be processed. Will this involve fingerprints or some kind of photograph? Those details have not been yet released to the public.
You know, as you point out, even after seeing the remarkably detailed indictment, many of Trump's political allies and 2024 presidential rivals, they're not criticizing him. They may criticize the indictment, is what we're hearing. So how might their tone change, or could it change, depending on what happens in court?
So much of this is going to depend on the facts that emerge. This indictment is detailed. There's so much in here about alleged obstruction of justice, obstruction of a federal investigation, of conspiracy, violations of the Espionage Act. For any other politician this could be something that would be viewed by political strategists at least as a career ender, to even have this whiff of unsavoriness in terms of alleged conduct being presented to the American public during a presidential campaign. That being said, Trump's in his own league when it comes to dealing with legal challenges. He's the only former president who's ever been indicted like this on a federal level, a state level, could face an indictment in Georgia. And for nearly a decade now, the Republican Party, having covered it closely, has become quite used to Trump facing legal and political hurricanes. And so for many Republicans, this is just another storm, another hurricane. Could it peel some of his support off? Sure. But at this point, because Trump's support is fueled by grievance and populism, this kind of thing is not playing out in the way it would perhaps for a traditional politician.
Very well put, Bob. Thank you very much. So joining me now for more analysis is CBS News legal contributor Rebecca Roiphe. So much of this is so remarkable, Rebecca, and I was thinking to myself, these are the kind of questions that I imagine legal scholars and constitutional scholars would sort of bounce around after a late night of drinking. Okay, so imagine if this was the case. So imagine if we had a convicted a person who won the presidency. Like, it's sort of come to that. According to new polling from CBS News, if Trump was convicted, 80% of GOP voters said that he should still be able to be president. So that's what they say in a poll. But what does the law say? Can you serve as president if you've been convicted?
Right. So you're absolutely right. I think legal scholars are sitting around tables, over a beer or whatever it might be and discussing this because it is so unprecedented. And the answer to your question, the short answer is yes. There's nothing in the Constitution that states that a president who's been indicted or is under indictment or is even in jail, in prison, couldn't serve as president. What would happen under those circumstances? Again, it's uncharted territory. I assume that if he were convicted and serving a term, that he would then at some point have to be released because you can't do your job as the chief executive if you're in prison. So there would be some kind of habeas corpus petition and he would be able to be released under that. But again, we're not there yet. And it's really, as you said, nobody knows exactly.
So I'm sort of learning new things now about the law, as I have been over the past few years. And so this indictment, as I understand, is something sort of nicknamed or colloquially called a speaking indictment, because there's so much information that usually indictments don't have this much information. What stood out to you about it?
What stood out to me was the detail and also the seeming amount of evidence about intent, because what separates this case, if the government can prove it, from those other cases we've heard about, Pence had documents, Hillary Clinton had documents, even Joe Biden, the current president, had some documents, some classified documents in his home. So what separates this from those has to be this plot. And so what stood out in my mind was the amount of evidence that went to the former President Trump's intention here. What was he trying to do? He and his aide, Walt Nauta, if the government can prove this, knew exactly what they were doing and plotted it. And that is what sets this apart. Now, again, there's a political question as to whether that matters to the public, but from a legal perspective, that's a critical difference that makes this a criminal case and those a case that the FBI is interested in pursuing just in terms of getting back those documents that were misplaced and putting them in the right hands and making sure that they are safe.
So we learned that two of Trump's lawyers quit after his indictment. There certainly is information out there suggesting that he deliberately misled some of his attorneys. We don't know why I don't know why these attorneys quit, but how could that impact his case?
It's not unusual that when an indictment comes down, a defendant will, rejigger his team in order to make sure he has people with the particular kind of expertise he wants. But I think you're also right to point out that in various different ways, the former president is a difficult client. And this indictment is full of evidence about his efforts to use his lawyers to further criminal conduct. And so, of course, people are entitled to lawyers, especially when they've been accused accused of a crime. But those lawyers always have to act within the bounds of the law. And I think his effort to push his lawyers beyond that point is quite significant and is one of those factors that makes him a difficult client to have.
All right. Rebecca Roiphe, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Anne Marie.